Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Hello Show. It is so nice to see so many smiling faces out there in front of me. And now, I'd like to present my favorite guy in the whole world, your host, Mark Isitt.
Thank you very much. We haven't actually met before. This is the first time, so I don't think I'm the favorite guy yet. Welcome to the Hello Show. It's a talk show which will be broadcast from the Stockholm Furniture Fair every day, once, twice, sometimes a day. And what we'll try to answer up here are the following two questions. What does it take to have a really successful meeting? And secondly, how will our meetings change in the future? And in order to do this, we've invited designers, architects, and scientists. And the organ slayer, Indy. A warm hand.
Thank you. Thank you, Mark. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, I love you. Won't you tell me your name? Hello, I love you. Let me jump in your game. Hello, I love you. Won't you tell me your name? Hello, I love you. Let me jump in your game. No verses today.
Oh, that's good.
Thank you. Take it away, Mark.
Thank you. Well, we'll be talking to a scientist called Pernilla Quarfordt, who will be with us over the wire from Silicon Valley, and she's been researching how new technology can improve meetings. But before we talk to her over the wire, we'll actually meet someone in real life. Yeah. And this person is also a scientist. She is an architect, and she has been looking at offices, and through her research she's been able to prove that a well-designed office will increase creativity, it will decrease sick leave, and it will boost the morale of the employees. So please welcome first guest, Christina Bodin Danielsson. Welcome.
Thank you.
Have a seat. So what do you think of this as a meeting place?
Kind of exposed.
Kind of not the place where you would be the most creative, maybe?
I don't think you will be most relaxed here, which is something that you have to be in order to be creative.
Can you hear us all right? First and foremost. I'm a bit too loud maybe, and Christina's a bit too...
Am I? Can you hear
no?
me?
Yeah, good. You need to be relaxed in order to be creative.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you have to be.
Tell us about your research.
Actually, my research focuses on how the office environment, the architecture of the office, influences organizations and employees. And I'm studying it out of different aspects. So I've looked at health status, job satisfaction, environmental satisfaction as well, among employees in different types of offices. And I've also looked at how the employees actually talk about their companies, their organizations, and how the architecture itself influences their image of the organization and the workplace.
A sort of branding.
Yes, that's how you can, I guess, work with it, the results.
Okay, and the result of your research has shown that a well-designed office is extremely important from several points of views.
Yes, it is. It has health aspects, environmental satisfaction aspects, and job satisfaction. All these aspects are actually success factors out of an organizational point of view. And of course, out of an individual point of view, it's also important because you like to go to the job and enjoy it and do it well at the office.
What is the situation today in Sweden when it comes to sick leave, for example?
Actually, we used to be world best in this.
World best in being sick.
Right.
Okay, good.
And still today, the most common reason for reporting sick leave among white-collar workers, in other words, office employees, is mental ill health. And the rates are decreasing, but they're still among the highest in the world. And that's actually the reason I went into this research, because I've been working as a practicing architect for quite a while. And then I got interested in how the environments that I was creating at the drawing table influenced people in different ways.
Okay. And why are we so sick? And it's mental ill health.
That's the aspect that is important out of a white-collar point of view. Well, it has the mental ill health. Of course, health has to be understood in the context of the whole world. It's not only the office environment. And in fact, there are other aspects that are much more important out of a health point of view. Your life situation, how the workplace itself, leadership and all that. But I was interested in how the architecture itself influenced this as well, because it has not been done from that point of view before. And as an architect, that was my interest. So I decided to go out there and do it, try to measure it, as we say in scientific language. We measure.
It's all about statistics. If you haven't got statistics,
a great part of my research is quantitative. In other words, statistic. The other part about how the employees talk about their organization, how they feel about the workplace, and the coherence among the employees was qualitative. In other words, it's based on in-depth interviews.
Okay, okay. And what did you find out? Why are we ill?
Why we're ill? Well, if I leave out the major aspects, such as life situations, such as the fact that the society has changed, that we're supposed to always perform on top results and always be ready and eager to work, beside those factors. So actually, the office environments where we work today are not really the very best. They don't support the individual's need for personal control to a great extent. Some office types do this and some doesn't. And unfortunately, the most common office types are the least well-designed office environments out of that aspect. And that's the key factor for health and well-being. Personal control. And
personal control?
Yes. And the design can help you with that, to achieve that in different ways.
How can it do that?
By giving you the ability to find places within the office where you can seek privacy when you need it, where you can visual and acoustic privacy, for example, talk without being afraid someone is overhearing you, or working on your own thing and not having to expose it for anyone when you're not ready for it. And also the ability to work outside of the office, but that's more or less an organizational aspect.
On a laptop, for example?
Yes. And also, I mean, it has to be architecture features that supports the privacy as well as meetings within the office. And there has also to be functional aspects, features that supports it. And these should go hand in hand. And some office types just don't do it. They don't give you that ability to find meeting points when you like to do that, and to find privacy when you need that to carry out your work assignments the best way.
Okay. It's interesting that you mention the importance of privacy, because when you read about offices nowadays, it's all about working in the open open office-scape. You know, it's all about tearing down walls rather than building walls.
Yes, it is. I agree fully.
Yeah.
It's a misconception that we should always be in the open space, because that's not what the individual needs. Sometimes we need that open space for meetings, to see other people, because we like to belong to a group. And therefore we want to feel the coherence and see colleagues, because no one wants to work completely solitude by yourself. But on the other hand, you sometimes need to find that solitude to think a thought through, so to say. And unfortunately, when we're completely tearing down the walls and talking about democracy and talking about that we have, this is an open office, we have no hierarchy or whatsoever. It's just, excuse my word, but it's bullshit.
So it doesn't, an office-scape which is open and totally democratic, so to speak, is not a more creative space.
It is if it allows meeting to take place at the specific spots where they should take place. But if the complete office is open,
Yeah.
a lot of people will avoid the office if they have the ability to seek other spaces to do their work, because you don't always need to see people. Sometimes you want to be by yourself to actually concentrate and be creative by yourself, because not all creativity takes place in meetings, or actually some creativity takes place in meetings with yourself, if I may put it that way.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. A meeting with yourself. But today, meeting is the buzzword, isn't it?
Yes.
Meetings. Everybody wants meetings. And why is that? Is that some urge one has to fulfill oneself, to seem wanted, or what can it be?
Yeah, if you want to... Actually, that's what came up to my mind as well.
Yeah.
To feel that you're important. Then you're occupied, right?
Yeah.
Actually, there is research that shows the most people with the highest hierarchy within an organizations, of course, are in most meetings, and also these are the least available people, which you have to have extra keys to have access to. So to be occupied, and I guess be in meetings, all different kind of meetings, means that you're important.
Exactly. Have you ever, when you get a phone call when you're just about to pick up the kids at the kindergarten, have you told the person at the other end that I'm going into a meeting now, but...
Oh, that was clever. I should do that. You should say, let me get back to you. But I should say, I'm having an important meeting. Let's talk to each other later on.
Exactly. An important meeting with my kids.
Exactly.
You had two images that you wanted to show, and I don't know if one of them is probably up on the screen now. I think it's the one we see in front of us there on the monitor.
Yeah.
What is that?
That's actually, the picture comes from a computer game which is inspired by the program, the TV series, The Office, and I just picked this picture because I like it, I find it funny, and I think it shows the fact that the workplace itself means really a lot for the individual, because we are social creatures, and if we work in an office, it can be almost the whole world for us, and certainly meetings takes place there. Meetings you like to have and meetings you don't like to have.
Aren't you supposed to find spaces in an office-scape, room for spontaneous meetings?
Yes.
There aren't any room for spontaneous meetings in that image there, are there?
No, they're sitting in cubicles.
Because the spontaneous meeting is something that when you're, as an architect, when you design an office,
yes,
I suppose that is what you're planning for, really. I mean, it's easy to make a room, we meet in this room, we have our discussions here, but you want people to meet when they're on their way to the coffee machine too, right?
Right, because
talk in a more spontaneous way.
Those meetings are actually the most important meetings for an organization, out of a leadership and organizational perspective, because a lot of the leadership is actually operating spontaneously. Because when you see your colleagues, that's when you come up with the idea, yes, I need to tell he or she this before the thought is gone, so to say. And these ideas, this meeting come up in certain places, and these places are called activity nodes in research, in environmental research, and architects can direct and control by the design these activity nodes. So these meetings takes place where we like them to take place and avoid them to take place where we don't like them to take place. So spontaneous meetings should be directed, and we can use activity nodes for that.
Did you have another image?
Yes, I have a picture actually of an... I like this picture. It's this is the headquarters of QMed in Uppsala, and this is their kitchen area, and it's also the staircase that combines 2 levels of the office. And what's nice with this place is that it's a double activity nodes, because the staircase itself generates meetings, because people, if you have to leave one floor and walk up to the 2nd floor, you have to take the staircase, right? And then you will meet someone, because a lot of people will pass the same way. And also the coffee machine, of course, have you come, so to say. It's like in the village in old times, you would go for the well.
But this is a rather noisy environment, I can imagine. I can imagine that the guy sitting working at the white desk downstairs there is rather annoyed by the people upstairs.
Yes, but actually, because it's 2 stores and it's not very big, this hall, the noise is not going to go down. It's more likely going to go up. Whereas if you have a big atrium, of course, then the noise will really transfer, because noise is hard to control. But in this case, it won't, because it's just 2 stories high.
And this type of spontaneous meeting point, are they important for all businesses? Is it the same for a lawyer's office as it is for an advertising agency?
In my point of view, it is, actually. It's one of the weak points of, for example, cell office, an office time where every individual has an own personal office. It's very important, especially in those offices, because then you don't see the other people. You're not within the social context. And then you really should work much more with activity nodes, in my opinion. And because that's how organizations operate. Not all meetings are formal and booked beforehand. And certainly the most important meetings are not the booked ones.
Why is that?
Because spontaneous ideas and thoughts just are not controlled. That's not how they come up.
Is it a matter of prestige too, that if you sit like this, say that you're a lawyer, which I imagine is a rather prestigious profession,
Yes.
and you have this type of meeting point in your office, you see the judge walking up the stairs, and you can say, "Hey, Mr. Judge, I had a question for you." But you would dread walking down the corridor, knocking on his door, asking for an opportunity for a meeting. "No, I don't have time. No, can I come back?" And and it's just so much easier to get to get talking.
Yeah, they will certainly have more fun at the office, I believe, if they had more activity nodes.
So maybe it's even more
firms.
important for law firms, say, to have this rather unprestigious type of interior solution.
Certainly, because architectural is traditionally used as a symbol for different things, and that's why it's no coincidence, for example, that the executive floor almost 100% of the time, almost at least 95%, is placed on the top floor in a high-rise building.
Meaning that they do not want to talk to you.
Yes, and they don't want to be disturbed.
No.
They're so very important. And if you go up there, you do it perhaps once a year, twice, and then you certainly have to have something important to tell them if you dare take the elevator all the way up.
Talking about law firms, they all look in a typical way. It's the type of wood, rather dark, it's rather gloomy, but very posh. And advertising agencies and architectural offices too, of course, also look in a very particular way.
Yes, that's, I guess, controlled by its tradition to a certain degree, and also what you want to symbolize. Because open spaces symbolizes, after all, openness, right? Whereas cell offices symbolizes and shows the fact that here we control, we are in charge, and you can be certain that what you tell me will not pass on. It's behind locked doors.
What about a hospital?
Yes, it should. Meetings, I guess, out of an organization aspect, spontaneous meetings are important for employees, physicians and nurses at the office, at the hospital. But out of a patient point of view, I think you certainly want that privacy. And you want to make sure that if you want to meet someone, you go to a certain place or you go out in the corridor. So you don't want people to walk into your office and into your, room.
The operation room,
yeah.
while you're lying there on the bed.
That would be catastrophe, right?
What do you think, being an architect and looking at city planning from this? Just imagine that instead of designing an office and the plan for an office, you're designing a city. Do you consciously design meeting points in a city as well? And I'm not first and foremost maybe thinking of parks, because they are like the meeting room, right? But you have to make room for the spontaneous meetings as well.
Yes, that's what Jane Jacobs showed in her very important book, Life and Death of Great American Cities.
The death and life, actually.
Oh, the death, yes, right. She started with death.
Yes, yes.
She talks about the grid that should be very fine and not at all large in scale, but very fine and small scale, because it's important, because within those, every node, that's where the meeting takes place, and that's where the social control is, and that's where a neighbor gets to know each other. And so definitely out of a city plan perspective, this is very important, and we should not only focus on the focal points, such as squares or parks or landmark buildings or whatever.
And when you say grid, you mean the grid of streets, that there are a lot of different blocks.
Paths.
Yeah,
Small
so
parks
many street corners.
Exactly, it should be a lot of street corners. It's not perhaps very economical. It perhaps might be better to have really big blocks.
Yes.
But out of a human perspective, out of a good city planning perspective, is much better.
Okay, we'll be giving Pernilla Quarfordt a call any second now. But I was just wondering, she's very much into digital meetings. Pernilla is working with modern technology, how modern technology can make a meeting more successful, and you can have a meeting in Stockholm with someone in Silicon Valley. What is your impression of that type of digital meeting?
I think it's great that we can have it, and it's very important if you work, for example, in an organization that works globally. You don't always have to actually go to the place physically and work with your colleagues if you're in a project. Nowadays, a lot of the global organization works with this very consciously. They are actually creating meeting rooms which have the same design in Sweden and in, for example, Singapore.
So the room looks the same in Sweden as in Singapore?
Right.
So you get the impression that you are actually in the same room as the people you're talking to?
It's designed so in order to reinforce the sense that you're actually having a physical meeting, yes.
Okay.
So I think it's great that we have this ability, and we should certainly use it more than we do out of an environmental perspective. But still, the physical meeting is always going to be the top number one.
Why?
Because that's how we created. We use our sensory system. We have 5 or 6 or even 20 different senses, depending on how you actually count and define what senses are. But we use it in order to evaluate the specific situation we are in, and that's how we know if we like someone or we don't like someone, if we trust someone, if we don't. So in that sense, I don't think we can work on it digitally, but it's never going to be as good as the real physical meeting, because then we can use the tactile senses and everything, the kinetic, and this is how we move, everything, which you can't see really.
So we should trust our senses?
Oh yes, definitely. It's always trust your senses.
Okay. Let's try to give Pernilla a call.
Hello.
Oh, hello, Pernilla Quarfordt. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Thank you.
You can see us. Can you?
I can see you.
Yeah, and we can see you. But you're looking the wrong way. We're up here.
Well, that has to do with a very common problem with video conferencing systems, that the camera is not positioned where you look, which is the way human works in some sense, because the eyes are positioned where we look.
Yeah.
So when we have eye contact with other people, we can tell approximately where they're looking, but that's very hard in a video conference system where the camera is not behind the screen when you're looking.
No.
Or besides, or you don't know how the image is positioned.
Well, now
The other person's looking at.
now you've met Christina Bodin Danielsson. Here she is. And the audience is over there. I don't know if you can see them as well.
I see your leg.
Yeah, good. Do you regard it as if we've actually met now? Have we met?
Well, in some sense, we probably have met. In other senses, we don't have met. It's a sort of artificial meaning. As Christina pointed out, I agree with her a lot on that point. And I think that physical meanings are not going away, and that's not my goal either. Rather, I'm interested in looking at the kinds of devices and information that you bring to meetings and how we can support the meetings using different kinds of devices, like spontaneous meetings. You often have paper and pen.
Yeah.
Very good tools for scratching down ideas and reminders to yourself of things that you need to do when you get back to your office or workplace.
Pernilla, could I interrupt you and just ask you to speak a bit slower? Because there's a slight echo, so it's a bit difficult to hear you. So a bit slower, please.
I will try.
Pen and paper is good, yeah.
Yes, it's excellent. But we also know that people bring things like this, phone. Some people carry around their computers and they can show things on the computers.
How many computers do you have at home? You've got 2 in front of you now. How many computers do you have?
No, actually that's a video conferencing system, so that's
I
guess not a computer, but yeah, well, I got a little tablet computer too, from the iPad. My husband's computer is next by, and I probably have 3 or 4 other computers at home.
Whereabouts are you now?
I'm at home.
Okay, and what time is it?
Let's see. It's 4:26.
In the morning?
In the morning.
Oh, poor you, to have to get up in the middle of the night to do this. Well, we're very grateful for it.
Thank you.
We had a few pictures from you too. Could we bring them on, please?
Let's show the first one.
Yeah. What is this? What are we seeing here? It's a cafeteria of some sort.
Yes. So one of the trends with sort of with the modern workplace is that we're getting more and more mobile, and as we get more mobile, and the technology that we have affords to be mobile. We have the phone, we have the laptop, or the iPad, or all of these things, and they so you can carry all the information that you need to do your work with you, and we also see that besides spontaneous meetings in the workplace, also meetings outside the workplace or in social areas is something that's quite important. So this is was an image, I see myself again up there, of a cafe, and
And what is it they have on the table there? It's a laptop to the right and something else in front of the guy there.
Yeah, so that this is sort of an envisioning of the future, somewhat futuristic. It's sort of when we're thinking about the future. As I said, the pen and paper is excellent. The problem with sort of pen and paper is that you lose the papers. If you're in a cafe, you might not have paper ready available, so you might scratch on a napkin. Who knows what you need to wipe your fingers with afterwards, and you might lose the paper. So what can we do in order to sort of meet that need? And the idea I had in sort of this kind of tools. That one might not be very well. But you have some drawing tools, for example, on these iPads. But the screen is fairly small. It's maybe good enough for 2 people, but if you get more than 2 people, you might need something bigger.
Yeah.
And at that, the idea was that you sort of can connect several of them to get a larger display and just sort of put them next to each other, and you can sort of start drawing or sketching on larger things. And as you leave, you pick up your computer, your tablet computer, and the document is shared with you. And this is a way of sort of supporting the need in a sort of enhanced way from pen and paper, which just one of the participants can carry with them.
So what are you saying? That you bring your computer to a meeting and the other computer senses that it's you, or that you have a certain amount of information on the computer, which is then passed on to the other computer, or automatically?
So in this case, so the modern computers now has a lot of sensors, as you say. And these sensors can sort of, they can tell if there's other computers near them. So by sort of attaching them, you can maybe connect a larger workspace, a shared workspace of your computer.
You can put them next to each other and get a bigger screen.
Yeah, exactly.
And what about screens? I'm thinking about flat screens, for example, TVs and so on. It should be possible to have walls being screens.
Oh yeah. Well, we can imagine it. I think that the next image sort of shows more of a meeting room.
Yeah.
Where you have a lot of display areas, and these display areas can be shared by everybody in the room. Super visible. I'm trying to get at the same image here so you can see it myself. Oh, very good. As you see, you have the tabletop, which some might show the same things as the thing you have on the TV, on the display, but you might have also different content on the different areas. And some might be designated for teleconferencing equipment, others for interactive content, so people might need to, people really like in small spaces to go up and sort of point to things.
Yeah.
Because they can reach them, and it's more expressive than when you're just using a laser pointer, for example, or a mouse pointer. It feels more natural.
So here, every flat surface is actually turned into a screen. Not the ceiling, not the floor, but apart from that.
Well, you can actually imagine the floor having sensors and projectors too. I've seen some work in that regard, where you can control some of the interactive or display areas with how you're standing and how you're sort of leaning back and forth, or moving towards things or moving away from things. Might even recognize who is sort of stepping on the floor. So since we think this is a sort of a meeting room that's imagined pretty far in the future, and maybe and as these meeting rooms, as we create these meeting spaces, we think that there will be a lot of different sensors in them that can sort of assist in making the information display more seamless than they are today.
Because one of the problems when one does an event like this, I'm very surprised that you were able to come on right that very second, because technique is always hell, right? It never works. You always walk into a meeting room and it never works, you know, or you haven't got that cable and it's, you know, no interactive Wi-Fi, whatever it's called. But the company that you're working for, Fuji, Xerox, Palo Alto Laboratories Incorporated, right? FX Palo Alto Laboratories. Yeah, exactly. The rather tricky name. Anyway, the company you work for, you deal with things like that. You try to simplify these multimedia solutions.
Yes, that's our role. I work in an area called human-computer interaction.
What was it called?
And it's called human-computer interaction. And we are looking at how people are interacting with devices, and in some cases even spaces where you have which are interactive, that you when you walk up to something, it comes alive and you can start sort of getting information from it, or controlling what is shown and what is not shown.
You can do that today, right? Control what is shown and not shown?
Yes, I do. I call you guys.
So what's the advantage in the future? What's the great gain that you can see?
So, well, one of the things that we have been working with is, as you said, to simplify things. Because one reason why everything is working so smoothly for you now, here, is that you have, I don't know how many people behind the scenes that helps to put things up on the big display, to control my microphone, your microphones, and in companies we can't afford to have all these wizards behind the screen helping us all the time when we're trying to do meetings. So Christina talked a little bit about these videoconferencing rooms where we build up the exact same room in different locations in the world.
Yeah.
And I looked at the cost for those ones earlier today, and there's basically two companies doing this. One is HP Halo, and that one, the installation cost between $300,000 and $400,000.
Dollars?
And that's
okay.
per room.
Right. Quite an investment.
It's quite an investment, and so what can we do to sort of, can we make the technology easier to use, so you can walk up and it starts working as you enter the room without having all that support stuff and all quite a bit of investment in running the rooms, and that was sort of our goal of some of the research that I have been doing. So simplify things.
Yeah.
Making them more sort of focused on the meeting rather than focus on getting the technology started and
exactly.
all the administration that's associated with that,
exactly.
with that part.
Christina, what are your thoughts when you hear this?
I think it sounds good.
Yeah.
That it goes on as soon as you enter.
Yeah,
Like
that sounds good. Yeah.
Where you log on into the room and say, log on to Singapore. Once you enter, and then you are. Yes, it's very important if you like it to be somewhat spontaneous. It can't be fully spontaneous, of course, these digital meetings. But it should certainly be help if we gets the technology to be easier to operate, and we don't have as much devices and so on.
Pernilla, do you have statistics? Have you done research looking at meetings? Which meetings result in when is the result the best? Is it better to meet face to face, or is it better to go for a digital meeting, or do you have any such statistics that you can argue your point from?
So, personally, I haven't done that kind of research, but there's other people who have done considerable amount of that kind of research. And what we know is that for different purposes, video conferencing might work well. It works fairly well when the people know each other already, so you're sort of building on established relationships.
Okay.
So if you want to start out a teamwork with people from different parts of a multinational organization, it might be good to bring them together so they get to know each other. They can go apart, do their sort of work, and have video conferencing to maintain their relationship.
Okay, so if you've met once, it's a lot easier and a bit more creative, maybe.
Yes, because you sort of are more attuned to sort of the other person. You know when you need to slow down when you're talking, when you can go ahead, and that sort of thing. And it's just one form of the communication that you have for maintaining that relationship. You still have email, phone, and all the instant message and that sort of thing available to you.
What type of meetings would you say would be totally impossible to have, digital-wise?
If we're again talking about sort of video conferencing, it might be hard to do good negotiations because it's sort of a lot depending on the kind of signals that we rely on when talking face to face, like eye gaze, posture, gesture, and sort of getting a sense of the atmosphere. For video conferencing, it feels a little bit distant. It's not the same kind of presence, as we call, as when you're meeting face to face. And it's, although people are working on trying to get it better, to use different techniques for displaying the other people in the room, so they will appear as the eye gaze is where you think they are looking. It's still sort of far away in comparison to sort of accomplish a real feeling of the other being present.
Exactly, and you're actually able to control the situation a lot more, of course, when you're there, both of you, because if you start scribbling on a piece of paper now, we wouldn't know, Christina and I, if you were just writing a letter to someone or if you were taking notes.
Yeah, in some sense you have a similar thing going on if you have a meeting and everybody's sitting behind their laptops.
That's right, of course, yeah.
And suddenly starts tapping, you have no idea if they're taking notes.
What did I say that was so interesting? Yeah.
Or are actually checking out their Facebook and updating their status message.
Could be. What do you think, Christina? Could one actually do a video conference with one's psychiatrist?
Actually, that's what they are experimenting on. They're doing research on that. And I went to a dissertation where the defender claimed that it didn't have any impact on the fact that they were on digital therapy instead of really meeting their therapist. But I must say that I'm a bit suspicious because that's a typical meeting that depends very much on trust, just like negotiation. And then all your senses has to be incorporated. And perhaps if you, as Pernilla said, you have established a relationship and you might be on vacation and you want to meet your therapist, then it might be a good idea to be able to have a digital therapy. But I don't think you can start out digital with that, to be honest.
What do you say, Pernilla?
Yeah, possibly agree with that. I think it might be sort of possible, but that it would probably take longer time because you need to get a feeling of what is going, sort of, we are pretty flexible. Communication is pretty flexible, so that when you're actually looking, you can compensate for some of the signals that you lose. And I've seen that in my research. It's kind of hard sometimes to get the results that you want because people are very good at compensating when they're losing some senses with others. For example, you might talk more than you would have done in face-to-face because you can gauge a lot more from sort of the other signal, like eye gaze and that sort of thing, and gestures and postures. Than you can when you actually do a face-to-face meeting. I mean, video conferencing meeting. So perhaps they might use the verbal channel a little bit more. They might be able to sort of reach the same level of trust, but it might take a little bit longer time because you sort of, the quality is not quite, and the experience is not quite the same.
No.
You can, to some extent, adapt for that.
Interesting.
For that, right.
Christina and I were talking about the open office-scape before, and how annoying it is, how disturbing it can be, and the necessity of having smaller groups working within that office-scape. Is there any way, from a technology point of view, that one can limit the disturbance? I mean, not putting up new walls, but is there some way one can sit in an office-scape with 100 people and divide the scape into groups of 5?
Well, I did saw some research when I was doing a little bit of research for this show from Japan, where the idea was that basically everybody was wearing headphones, and you made the gesture to sort of block off an area, and they had, I think, projectors in the ceiling that would draw a line. So you know if you were inside the bubble, and since you were having headphones.
Headphones on? Everyone has headphones on?
Everybody has headphones on, whole office all day. And when you're inside this little bubble, you can only hear the people that's inside the same bubble. And then when you go out, you don't hear those people. I sort of, in some way it's a neat idea. I don't think it really sort of works that well.
No.
I think that it's a tricky problem, and maybe it's a problem where technology and architecture can work together to create some interesting solutions.
Christina?
There's something called sound showers, actually.
That's right, yeah.
Where you actually can have like curtains with the sound that you can block out the exterior space. It's sort of a bit like the bubble, and you don't have to wear the earphones.
That sounds great.
Christina was laughing here when you said that everyone will be wearing earphones.
Yeah,
what's so funny about that?
It's a bit like kinder show, like children, like bit like what's they called?
Teletubbies.
Yeah, exactly. I was thinking about Teletubbies actually, and then you would get the same body language as well. Walk around with your earphones at the office. Are you in the bubble with me?
Oh, but they're all very sweet towards each other, though.
Yeah,
they cuddle all the time.
Certainly develop a
the
subculture.
Teletubby hug.
Yeah, So have your own subculture.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Well, thank you, Pernilla Quarfordt from Silicon Valley. Thank you so much for joining the show, and thanks to Christina, Bodin, Danielsson, and that was all we had. Thanks to the audience, and thanks to the Organ Slayer, Indy.
Thank you. Have a lovely afternoon.
Thanks, Christina.
She's walking down the street, blind to every eye she meets. Do you think you'll be the guy to make the queen of the angels sigh? Hello, I love you, won't you tell me your name? Hello, I love you, let me jump in your game. Hello, I love you, won't you tell me your name? Hello, I love you, let me jump in your game.